Right, welcome. I don't know what I'm going to call this video. We should call this like Star Wars, I don't know, the PR strikes back, or I've no idea. But basically the Rolling Stone has come out and really shown their true colours as a bunch of shills. And I don't normally use that word too much, but when the likes of the Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and people like this have come out and actively said, look, this is hard to deny now, Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm, really, they're not handling Star Wars too well, and we live in a climate where people just don't want to even direct Star Wars movies anymore because it's going to be a smear on their career, which is quite literally the case these days. The Rolling Stone has come out and framed it as Kathleen Kennedy, the higher being, the literally higher being. Nothing can go wrong. She makes the most epic of decisions. Not only that, Kathleen Kennedy has essentially said that there is no source material for Star Wars, while simultaneously using all of the source material from what was the expanded universe, now Legends or whatever it's called. You can't make this stuff up. It's amazing. How do these people still have jobs? And before you answer, how do these people have jobs which pay ridiculous sums of money? Fucking hell. Right. So, I'm going to go through and read this article because I want you just to see. Now remember, the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and most mainstream outlets now are finding it very, very difficult to cover Disney's arse. And they are absolutely just saying, yeah, we've got sources that now state that people are worried. They don't really want to work as part of Disney and part of Lucasfilm. Yet this article frames it as Kathleen Kennedy, she has such a small source of directors to choose from because she's trying to choose like the creme de la creme. Really? So I got Ryan Johnson, is it? And hold your horses on that, because some of the words she says just contradicts all of the actions that they've been making during the handling of the Star Wars saga. Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy may well be the most powerful woman in Hollywood, and she's hardly a newcomer to the world of blockbusters. Serving as Steven Spielberg's producer since 1982's E.T., that partnership extended to Spielberg's collaborations on the Indiana Jones movies with George Lucas, who appointed Kennedy as his successor in 2012 as he negotiated a sale to Disney. As guardian of the Star Wars universe, Kennedy has needed every ounce of her experience, never hesitating to swap out creative teams, even mid-movie when necessary, as on 2018's commercial disappointment Solo. Then, in October, 2 weeks before Game of Thrones, David Benioff, D.B. Weiss, pulled out of a year-old deal to develop a Star Wars trilogy. Kennedy called Rolling Stones to discuss December 20th, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Just frame that, remember? Kennedy has needed every ounce of her experience, never hesitating to swap out creative teams. Yeah, but then people have also just left. I mean, oh god, it's terrible. Jurassic World director Colin Trevorrow was slated to write and direct Episode 9 before you brought J.J. Abrams back in. Is this final entry in the trilogy a particularly hard nut to crack? Okay, remember this. I'm pretty sure Colin Trevorrow just left. I'm fairly certain he left. I don't know. And obviously we don't know. But I'm pretty certain he just left. Every one of these movies is a particularly hard nut to crack. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. What are you smoking? Because you do. And you've been using them. It's the expanded universe. Legends, you've been using it as part of everything you've been doing recently. What are you smoking? I can't believe people actually believe this trash. We don't have anything other than passionate storytellers who get together and talk about what the next iteration might be. We go through a really normal development process that everybody else does. You start by talking to filmmakers who you think exhibit the sensibilities that you're looking for. And I would argue that the list is very small. So, okay, that part I can believe in, right? But then it's the next part that you just go, you're talking PR trash. People who really do have the sensibilities about these kind of movies, and then the experience and the ability to handle how enormous a job these movies are. Rian Johnson didn't have any experience in that capacity. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Unbelievable. So we try to be as thoughtful as we possibly can about making these choices. I would also argue that sometimes people get involved in the normal development process and then they realise, oh my god, this is so much more than I ever imagined. So it's pretty common that when you're working on movies, you're not making choices and decisions that necessarily work out exactly the way you want from the get-go. It's been an evolving process with lots of people and lots of opinions, and then you try to shape something into what it eventually becomes. So I feel really fortunate that I've worked with so many great people that have been absolutely committed, JJ being one of them. He's a huge fan, incredibly passionate about Star Wars, and has been from the moment he and I sat down and started talking about this. And the more he got involved, the more excited he became. So I think if you ask him today, he probably wishes he'd been in a situation where he could have done all three. But as I said, these are huge projects, so it's very difficult. Unless there's 3 or 4 years in between. It's not really physically possible. Bullshit. Pretty sure Lord of the Rings was filmed back to back, wasn't it? Just plan it properly and actually film it. It's possible. I can't believe that. I can't believe she's trying to frame it as there's no source material. This is laughable. There's no source material. You've got years of movies before it anyway. There's your source material. You've got comics. You've got novels. And you've been using them. Just ridiculous. It's insane. Oh, check this out. How did you get to the point where you felt we've got this with the story for episode 9? Well, I wouldn't say you ever get to a point where you just go, that's it. It's a constantly evolving process. I mean, there's still little things that we're trying to get exactly right now. You never stop the storytelling iterations that go on in making these movies, but we know what these previous 8 movies are. We know what that story is. So in this movie, we're taking all of what's come before and we're trying to find a satisfying conclusion to everything by bringing people back from the dead. It's not a conclusion, is it? Fuck. And I think we have, and that's something we can only depend on our instincts to arrive at. We've not done a very good job thus far, have you? Whether or not we have, and then we have what I would call the family and friends that you pull in and you show things to when you try to get some kind of feedback and make sure that you're making sense, that you're delivering on the things that you intend. That's something that we're still talking about right now. She's going to defend Rian Johnson now. Rian Johnson had some controversial choices in episode 8, The Last Jedi, especially considering its dramatic purpose as the second movie in the trilogy. Were you, to an extent, deliberately setting out to challenge fans and their expectations? I love it. Hide behind subversion of expectations, not shit storytelling. A bad narrative process. We definitely did. We're talking all the time about how we move Star Wars forward and how we keep it relevant. Obviously, we don't want to just keep making the same movie over and over again. So I agree with you. I mean, I love what Rian did. It's an absolutely wonderful movie. I think he's an extraordinary filmmaker. And I really appreciate the bold moves that he did make. It's just a circle jerk, isn't it? It's just a Hollywood elite circle jerk. Oh my god. How out of touch are you, Kathleen Kennedy? Seriously? Oh my god. I think people forget that, especially when you're doing a trilogy. When you're doing a trilogy structure, the first movie is setting things up, the second is usually the conflict, and the third is the resolution. So you're bound to have that second movie, in much the same way Empire Strikes Back was probably the darkest and most dramatic of the 3. We talked about it with Indiana Jones, you know, we did Raiders of the Lost Ark, not Raiders of the Ark. And then we did Temple of Doom, which was dark and created a lot of controversy, and people were surprised at where it went with the storytelling, but frankly, that's the whole point. What are you talking about? You're trying to compare the Temple of Doom and the Empire Strikes Back to The Last Jedi? Why do people keep... It's not the same. It's not comparable in any way, shape or form. I love that when we have these amazingly passionate fans who care so much, and I know sometimes they may think we don't listen, but we do. You don't. And I thought it was fantastic that people got that engaged. It just showed me and everybody else how much they care, and that's important for us all that are doing this. We really look at them as the custodians of the story as much as we are. We look at it as kind of a partnership, and yet you just... Who'd want to be your partner then? Oh my god. Certainly whatever movie comes after this, it is unconnected to the Skywalker saga. That's one of the biggest challenges in the history of the franchise. Until now, pretty much everything has been in some ways connected to the original story. What are your thoughts on that? It's an incredible challenge, and it's something that we're in the middle of, and I can't even begin to tell you where this may end up, because I think if you are... I think you are absolutely right. I think whatever the next movie is and how it begins to define a new way forward, it's something we want to take plenty of time and plenty of conversation and careful thought before deciding exactly what we're going to do. So they haven't even decided. So you truly haven't yet decided what's next? No. We've got various things we're looking at and various ways in which we can begin or not, as you can imagine. You know, do you go back? Do you go forward? All those questions are being asked. Do we stay in this galaxy? Do we go to another? The universe is never ending. The good news and the bad news. They have endless possibilities. It's liberating. It's exciting. Oh my god. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, how are you going to spin this? Thanks to Bob Iger's new book, we now know in some detail about George Lucas's dissatisfaction with The Force Awakens. What are your feelings about that? Personally, I've had a relationship with George going back to all of us meeting before making Raiders of the Lost Ark. So this is a long 35 plus years that I've known George, and I continue to be very, very good friends with George. And I think there's plenty of examples where people create something that is fundamental to who they are, where it's difficult letting go and watching that becomes something different. So I think initially that was difficult for George. I don't think he anticipated how hard that would be, and JJ came into it with such enthusiasm and, frankly, reverence for Star Wars and for George, and had to find what was personal for him. He had to make it his own by just remaking every other goddamn movie. Ridiculous. Every director who comes into a movie has to make something their own. They have to find themselves in the storytelling. And then that's going to become a different point of view, and I think that's all George was reacting to. Way to go. Way to speak for George. He may not agree with every choice JJ made. He may not agree with every choice Ryan made, but he appreciates the filmmaking. That I know, and he appreciates... Has he gone on record and said this? I don't think so. And he appreciates, for instance, what ILM has done for the work of these movies. So he appreciates the effects, does he? I mean, that's a company he created, and he just continually tells me how astounded he is by how far things have come and how now whatever comes into your mind can be achieved. And he came down, for instance, on The Mandalorian to see what we were doing. He's worked a long time with director Dave Filoni, and he's known Jon Favreau. And he was just a little kid. Oh my god, this is terrible. Awful. Terrible, terrible, terrible. They're even talking about getting... Is there any universe in which George could be lured back for some kind of one-off or just to do anything? I doubt it. But listen, I think it would be fantastic. Give him the opportunity to then. I bet you even haven't. This is terrible. This is trash. Like, Rolling Stone, seriously, how are you spinning this? There's no source material, ladies and gents. Kathleen Kennedy. 101, there's no source material. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know down below in the comments. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Stay up to date on the world of pop culture movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Cheers.